Believe me, it's the best thing, Dr. Bryce soothed. It won't be for long, just a month or two. A month or two? Mum wasn't the only one who was shocked. The press can be relentless. No! Mum's voice was quiet and all the more firm because of it. I'm not going to let the press, or anyone else for that matter, hound us out of our house. We haven't done anything wrong. I'm not going to let anyone treat us as if we have. Mrs. Kelsey, I really would recommend. We're not moving out of our house, and just as soon as Cameron is fit enough, he's going back to school. Mum's heels were well and truly dug in now. I'm sorry, Dr. Bryce, but I think my wife is right. We'd have to face this sooner or later. Surely it's better to do it now and get it over with. Then we can all go back to normal, said Dad. Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey, I know you're underestimating just what a pack of vultures you'll be dealing with. I've had the press camping out on my doorstep before. I know what I'm talking about, Dr. Bryce said sternly. As long as we have each other, we can handle it, said Dad. It'll be a 1-week wonder and then the whole thing will blow over. Mum looked at Dad and smiled. For the first time in a long time, they smiled at each other, and I was temporarily forgotten. I didn't mind. To be honest, it was nice to see. It made a change. I think you're both deluding yourselves, and for Cameron's sake, I would urge you to reconsider. Dr. Bryce wasn't about to give up. We'll be okay. Mum turned a smile to the doctor. The sooner we can get back to normal, the better. The doctor shook his head. I'll call the press conference for tomorrow, and another when Cameron is ready to go home. He sighed. Are you both prepared to take part in the second conference with me? Dad turned to Mum, a questioning look on his face. Is that really necessary? Mum asked. I would recommend it. It's better to throw the wolves a morsel or two than have them devour you alive, believe me, Dr. Bryce replied. Well, we'll do it. Cameron is going to be fine, and that's what I want to tell the world. So when can I go home? I asked Dr. Bryce. If you carry on like this, I don't see any reason why you couldn't go home within the next month. The next month? I said, dismayed. That long? Cameron, the worst thing I could do now is send you home before I'm 100% convinced that the anti-rejection therapy is working. Don't forget, this particular type of transplant has never been done before. I slouched back against my pillows, disappointed. All I wanted to do now was go home and then go to school and show all my friends that I was the same as them. I wanted to play football and swim and dance. I smiled ruefully. I guess the truth of the matter was I wanted to show off. But until then, I just have to be patient. Chapter 14, the first day. Hello, Alex. How are you today? Me? I'm feeling fine. In fact, I'm feeling super fine. I've never felt better. And yes, I am still in hospital, but guess what? I'm going home tomorrow. Just a sec while I have a bop. Not bad, huh? That's what Mum calls strutting in my funky stuff. That's an oldie saying. I call it getting down with my bad self. And look, I danced around for ages and I'm not even out of breath. So this is what it's like to be healthy. I'd almost forgotten. It's so great to be fit. I feel as if I could run a marathon without even pausing to catch my breath. I've already packed my bags. It's been 6 weeks since my operation. I'm finally going home. It was beginning to feel as if Dr. Bryce was never going to let me go. But today is the first day of the rest of my life. The operation was a complete and utter and total success. Not only am I still standing, but I'm running, jumping, dancing, you name it, I can do it. And at last everything seems to be coming together. Mum and Dad are getting on much better now. Mum's getting a bit of a tummy bulge now, so I can see you growing. It's amazing. Mum says that when she has her next scan, I can go with her so I can see what you look like inside her. Next time, both Dad and I are going with her. I can't wait. Do you know how I feel now? Peaceful. I don't have a thing in the world to worry about. I really feel like I could live forever. Bryce called his press conference. Mum and Dad wouldn't let me watch it on the telly. They said some of the reporters were bound to come up with really stupid questions and comments, and they didn't want me to get upset. They watched it though. When I asked them how it went, all they said was, okay. I do wish they wouldn't treat me like a baby, or worse still, a cretin. Michelle, Pete and all the other nurses couldn't tell me what happened at the press conference either. I'm meant to attend a press conference this Saturday with Mum and Dad. Mum reckons that once that's over, we'll have the media off our backs. I'm still taking my anti-rejection medication. I have 1 injection a day. Dr. Bryce says I'll have to keep giving myself these injections for the foreseeable future. The injections sting a bit, but I don't mind. It was a bit daunting at first to have to stab myself with a needle, but now I'm used to it. Diabetics have to do this sort of thing every day, so it's not as though I'm alone. I probably won't be making quite so many of these recordings now. There's no point, is there? I'll be here when you arrive. I'll carry on until you're born, though. I'll tell you things as they occur to me and as I live through them. It will be a video diary from me to you. Funnily enough, I eat much more healthily now than I did before the operation. I want to look after my new heart. I eat more salads and vegetables and fruit, and I don't eat red meat anymore, just fish and poultry. No particular reason, it's just healthier, that's all. I've decided to live until I'm 102. That's my lucky number, 102. I'm looking forward to getting home and seeing most of my friends again. I haven't spoken to Marlon since I read the article in the Daily Press. I know it was Marlon who told. No one else knew. More than once, I picked up the phone to call him and ask him why, but then why should I? He shouldn't make the first move, not me. I know he can't phone me or come to see me because he doesn't know where I am, but let's just see what happens when I get home. He let me down. I might forgive him, but I won't forget. Mum says Marlon's family got paid a load of money for the world exclusive they gave on that tabloid. Well, I hope Marlon enjoys the money. I trusted him. It'll be a long time before I do that again. Effect. Chapter 15. The Arrival. 1 more road, 1 more corner, and then we'd be home. I knew it was silly to feel like this. Anyone would think I'd never seen the place before, but it was home. Tonight I'd been sleeping in my own bed, in my own bedroom. Cameron, stop bouncing up and down. I caught Dad's grin via the inside mirror. You're going to ruin the car suspension. Aren't you glad to be home? Aren't you excited? I couldn't believe how cool Mum and Dad were acting. For the last 6 weeks, we'd all been living out of a suitcase at Dr. Bryce's clinic. I had more than enough of that. Dr. Elridge had dropped us off at the nearest mainline station where Dad had his car waiting for us. It had been a long journey with plenty of stops on the way, but now 1 more corner. What on earth? I stared out of the windscreen at the crowds in front of our house. It was like a crowd scene out of Lord of the Rings. What's wrong with our house? I asked anxiously. I looked up past our house towards the sky. I couldn't see any smoke billowing or flames pouring out of the windows. I could see a couple of police cars, but no fire engines. Dad slowed down so that the car only crawled forward. Are you okay, Kathy? He asked, his tone sombre. My mum nodded. I could see them both tense up. It was only then that I realised what was going on. Are all those people waiting for us? I asked, staggered. Mum turned to me and nodded. When we get out, straight ahead for the front door, and don't say a word to anyone. Leave the talking to your dad and me. I want to know how all these people found out we'd be coming home today, Dad said grimly. Do you think someone at the clinic told the papers? Asked Mum. Dad shrugged. He didn't have time to say anything else. A couple of heads turned our way, then more and more, and then what can only be described as a flood of people came rushing towards us. I shrank back in my seat, terrified. We were surrounded. There were people banging on the car and cameras covering every millimetre of the car windows. Questions were being shouted and screamed at us. There were men and women with microphones and notepads and digital recorders as far as the eye could see. Don't stop the car, Mike, Mum ordered. I have to. I can't get any closer to the house than this, Dad replied. I couldn't believe it. I stared at the crowd all around us, their mouths opening and closing, opening and closing. I'd once seen some sharks being fed, and that's exactly what this was like. Only this time, Mum and Dad and I were the shark bait. Can we back up, Dad? I asked. But it was too late. The crowd had closed in behind us. Cameron, what will you? The mob were banging on the car windows, firing questions at me from all directions. Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey, the 2 policemen fought their way through the crowds to Dad's side of the car. I've never been so relieved to see anyone in my entire life. Yes, Dad replied gratefully. The policemen immediately turned to look at me. It took a few moments to decipher their expressions, curiosity and something else. Not disgust exactly, more like distaste, distrust. Mentally, I shook my head. I was imagining things, seeing what wasn't there. More police turned up around the car, pushing back the crowds. The police formed a ring around us. One policeman, who seemed to be in charge, indicated that Dad should pull over. It took Dad ages to drive the car half a metre required to get to the pavement, with the crowd pushing and the police and then shoving back. I'd never seen anything like it. When Dad finally did manage to park, we all sat still, each of us stunned. None of us was too keen to get out of the car, or to say the least. Maybe we should have taken Dr. Bryce's advice, Dad ventured. No, this is our house, said Mum. If we carry on as normal, then everyone else will have to follow our lead. Besides, after the press conference tomorrow, they'll all leave us alone. The chief policeman tapped on the driver's window. Dad wound down the window. Mr. Kelsey, Mrs. Kelsey, I'm Sergeant Dexter. If you and your family would get out of your car now, we'll escort you to your house. The policeman was yelling over the noise of the crowd. Thank you. My wife is pregnant, so could you please look after her? Dad shouted back. Sergeant Dexter nodded. Who phoned you as a matter of interest? Dad asked, at the top of his voice. Dr. Bryce warned us that you were on your way home and asked us to help. We sent one car, but when we saw this lot, we had to call reinforcements. Dad looked around at the braying crowd and shook his head. He turned to Mum. Kathy, you sure about this? Maybe we should stay in a hotel with your mum for a while. No, Mum was adamant. This is our house. I want Cameron and the rest of us to get back to a normal environment as soon as possible. I wouldn't call this normal, Dad pointed at the crowd, still trying to swallow us up. To be honest, I agreed with Dad. I had no idea it would be this bad. What did all these people want? Okay then, Dad sighed. Here goes. When Dad got out of the car, the decipherable level rose perceptibly. I watched as he struggled past the police surrounding us to get to Mum's side of the car. He opened the door. I waited until Mum was out before opening my door and stepping out. The moment I set foot out of the car, the crowd erupted. From all sides, people surged forwards. The police had to link arms in a ring around us to stop them getting to us. I shrank back until the car was hard against my back. Mum and Dad stepped in front of me, but I could see their faces. I could still hear them screaming at me. Cameron, how do you feel? Cameron, what's it like to have a pig's heart? Why did you do it? How long will you live now? Cameron! Cameron! And on it went, and on and on and on. Like a relentless tide, the police shifted to make a ring directly around us, excluding the car. And still the shouting and screaming and yelling and calling continued. There were TV cameras and camcorders all around. The police edged towards our house with us in the middle. When I'd seen movie stars or pop stars surrounded by their bodyguards and their fans on the telly before, I'd always thought it must be so fun to be famous. But if this was what it was like, then it was more terrifying than anything else I looked around at the expressions on the faces of those immediately around us. Beyond the police ring, they scrutinised me with rapt attention. Some of them were staring at me as if I'd sprouted another head or something. We moved up our garden path, through the heaving crowds, with the police and Dad yelling something about trespassing, and for the first time since my operation I could hear my blood roaring in my ears. The roar was so loud it began to drown out the noise around me. Everyone and everything started to get swimmy and blurry. I was going to faint. No, not in front of these people, I told myself frantically. What would Mum and Dad say? What would my friends say? I'd never live it down. I took a deep breath and then another, and we were close to the front door now. Dad struggled to get the front door key in the lock. Intense lights blinked on and off all around us like mini lightning bolts. I turned my head slightly and was immediately blinded by more camera flashes. The front door opened. Come on, Cameron, breathe in, breathe out. The police ushered us into our house with Sergeant Dexter and a policewoman leading the way. I barely got my feet on our doormat before the front door was shut behind me. The unbearable roar was turned into an unbearable din outside the door, and my swimmy, sick feeling faded. In spite of the ringing phone, we all stood in the hall like statues. No one said a word. Welcome, sir, welcome home, the Sergeant Dexter said dryly. Dad looked at him as if he was mad and then smiled slowly. Quite a homecoming, he agreed. Are you all right, Kathy? My mum nodded. She headed for the ringing phone and picked it up. Hello? I started to walk past her to go into the kitchen to get some water, but the changing expression on her face made me pause. No, we wouldn't be interested, Mum said curtly. No, I'm afraid not. Goodbye. She put the phone down immediately. It started immediately ringing again. With the look of irritation, she picked it up. No, he won't, she said after a pause. No, goodbye. The moment the phone was down, it started ringing.